Right, so 11 days ago, we got a new top 15 MMOs by most played players or whatever. So let's watch it.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Lucky
Woo,
here, and
welcome
it's that
back.
time of the year where we look at the MMO genre and go over the most played MMOs right now. A lot has changed since the last time I made this video. We've seen some MMOs move way up on the list and some move way down. This video
It's always interesting to see the way that the player base sort of moves around in these games. People are often getting burned out and quitting one MMO and going to another. And I always love watching the rhetoric that people talk about whenever they're giving their reason for why. Oh, this game sucks because of X, Y, and Z, and this game's actually better because blah, blah, blah. And they go over there and they play that game for 1,000 hours and they say the exact same thing and they move to the other one. We're just moving around. I wonder how many new people are actually getting into MMOs every year. I'm always curious about that because I feel like it's a genre that is sort of falling down.
by quality, simply by active player base size. Which MMOs are dying? Which MMOs are
MMOs by nature are so much less immediately interesting to people than games like Fortnite or whatever are.
thriving? Let's find out. Number 15, New World. Playable on PC and soon to come to console. This survey is coming at a bad time for New World. It's currently experiencing its worst month in its history, but it hasn't come out of nowhere. The game has been bleeding players for some time now, sliding another 4 spots from number 11 on this list to number 15 in the last 6 months alone, and presently averaging just 4,800 players on Steam.
Well, New World's had so many problems, right, since it came out. New World released terribly. It's been doing terribly ever since then. They didn't have a lot of in-game content that got people really hyped up. The PvP has been glitchy as hell. But if it comes to PlayStation, I will play New World, guaranteed. That's what I'm going to do. I do a lot of my gaming sitting in front of a TV on the couch. I play Final Fantasy XIV and Elder Scrolls Online, both on PlayStation. That's the only reason I ever picked up either one of those games. So I will play New World when it comes to PlayStation for sure.
6 months ago, it was at 19,000 concurrent players on Steam. What happened? Well, New World is currently making a not so smooth transition to console at the moment. It seems that the focus on bringing the game to console has led to a massive drought in content for the experienced players sitting at the end game. Combine that with the fact that they're advertising it as a multiplayer action RPG instead of an MMO, and longtime players of the game are feeling a bit rattled. Is New World a bad?
Imagine if World of Warcraft started marketing itself as an action RPG instead of an MMO. People would have so many worries about what was going on with the leadership in that game. It would absolutely kill the player base. I worry about New World. I think it's a game that's going to fail long term. I don't think it's going to be around. I think that if you haven't played it yet, you should probably play it soon, or else you won't ever get a chance to play it. I think we have maybe 5 more years of New World.
Game?
It'll be
I don't
dead.
think so. As far as MMOs go, New World is one of the most fairly monetized ones out there, featuring very little in the way of things that could be considered pay to win. The game is buy to play with an optional battle pass. New World features a massive seamless open world for you to explore, and that's where it really shines. It shines when you're out exploring, questing, and gathering, and all of the things that you stumble into along the way. It's always really struggled when it came to group content and getting people into that content. The game features some of the best crafting progression out of any MMO. Every tree, bush, or rock can be gathered to level up your crafting and gathering. New World features the trinity of
It looks really, really good. I think New World looks absolutely amazing. But talk about a game where whenever you go and look up, should I play this game? The overwhelming attitude about the game is that it's bad. Not just by people who've been playing it for thousands of hours, but by people who are playing it new, who are 150, 200 hours in, that they're not enjoying it, that it has a whole bunch of glitches that have ruined their gameplay. There's been a bunch of issues, blah, 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 all these things. That's a bad look. Whenever you expect that when you're looking into a new MMO that people who have played it for a really long time will not like it anymore. That is the nature of MMOs. But when you see it with new players, you have something to be worried about.
Tank, healer, and DPS, and has some incredibly challenging dungeons and a mutation system for those dungeons that basically acts as a Mythic Plus system from WoW. This content can be fun, but also difficult to find groups for, especially with a current player count. As for its transition to console, well, it felt like this game was perfectly suited for that with its limited number of abilities that you can have at any given moment. It looks like the developers sacrificed a lot of the PC player count to get the game to console. Hopefully this is a gamble that plays off for them in the long run.
It really looks a lot like ESO, and I like the fact that it doesn't have a subscription that you have to pay for every single month. I now play ESO as a free-to-play player. I very rarely ever get ESO Plus because I just feel like it's a waste of my money in the long term. I like the idea of an MMO that I buy it, and then I never have to pay for anything else again if I don't want to, and I can play all the content that comes out as long as I buy the DLCs.
And they're able to bring those players back. Holding on to spot number 14, EVE Online is a dependable old MMO, released all the way back in 2003, but
EVE has been around for so long, and one day I want to play it. It just seems like something that even back in the day when it was new was too complicated for my brain. I mean, I was 8 years old when it first came out, but just like, this is a game that you heard about people unaliving themselves over whenever they had something really bad happen to them, and it just looks so intense the way you have to manage fleets and all of that. It seems like spreadsheets of the game to me. If you've played EVE, let me know in the comments if that's the truth, because I haven't ever played it and I'm definitely interested.
Still being actively supported by both its developers and its fans. EVE Online is an MMO where your goal is to build and upgrade a powerful spaceship so that you can join up with others to vie for control of the most profitable sectors of space. EVE Online is free to play with the option to pay money to do things like access more spaceships sooner. It also has an optional sub, and this optional sub is the most expensive subscription on the list, sitting at $20 per month. As with most optional subs, fans of the game will often tell you that if you intend to fully—
Man, Eve said we can get $5 more out of these people. We can do it. They need it, dude. They love this game. Let's just we've been here for this long, $20. That's what it costs now.
Enjoy the game. The sub is not so optional. EVE Online has a fantastic—
Could you imagine having to pull a $20 bill out of your pocket and hand it to someone every single month to continue playing this game?
It's a character creator, but that matters very little as you'll rarely see your character. Your focus is on your ship, and it's what you'll spend most of your time controlling. In EVE Online, players form their own alliances and then battle for control of the universe. PvP in EVE Online is high stakes, as when your ship is destroyed, it does not simply respawn. No, you must rebuild it again. The many hours, days, and months worth of materials it took to build that ship are now gone. EVE Online is often called the spreadsheet simulator, as many players—
I literally just said that. Dude, I should make this video. I swear. I mean, I'm terrible at editing and I don't know where he gets all this footage, but I should make this video.
Engage in tracking materials and costs diligently. CCP Games has finally embraced this and has added an integrated spreadsheet into the game.
That's
EVE Online was never the biggest MMO, but it and its—
I want to see what the actual combat in this game looks like. He's only showing cutscenes, but I don't have any idea what the combat looks like in this game. If the combat is good, I would be super interested.
Fans have kept it on the list for over 2 decades. Next up, slipping one spot, is SWTOR, or Star Wars: The Old Republic. Launched in 2011.
I took a brief stint with Star Wars: The Old Republic about a year ago, right before I got back into WoW really hardcore. My friend was playing it, and I tried to jump in with him, but by the time that I jumped in, he had already quit. He was only playing it for the story. He wasn't doing it for the MMO section whatsoever. I found it pretty interesting. I liked the fact that when you play Star Wars: The Old Republic, you can jump into missions with other people that actually have story interwoven with it, and you can sort of like queue up for a dungeon, but that dungeon has cutscenes that you and the other players get to participate in, and it's a BioWare game, so obviously the storyline is going to be good and interesting.
11 and available on PC. BioWare has handed this game off to a new developer to keep it up and running as they move on to new projects.
Really?
Typically, this does not bode well for the future of an MMO. SWTOR launched in 2011, developed by BioWare and published by EA. This is another MMO that is now free to play with an optional sub. That optional sub will unlock a lot of things, but most importantly, it will give you access to all of the game's zones and forever, even if you only sub for 1 month and then cancel. Veterans of the game will tell you that that's exactly what you want to do if you want to fully—
Is it possible to play a Star Wars game without playing a Jedi, without playing someone who uses a lightsaber? It just seems so— it's so frustrating because I'm sure they make all these classes that are really fun and interesting to play, but it's like, dude, all the things that I care about in Star Wars are people with lightsabers. I'm sorry, but that's just— it's the way it will always be. I liked Darth Maul, and I liked Darth Vader, and I liked— do I not like any of the good guys in Star Wars? Luke was okay, I guess. Yoda's okay, I guess. Mace Windu's cool. I don't know, man. The good guys are kind of lame a lot of the times, actually. I'm just realizing.
Experience SWTOR. SWTOR is probably most known for its amazing class stories that immerse you in the world of Star Wars. The class stories are fully voice acted and are incredibly well fleshed out and written. Perhaps the most unique part of these stories is that your choices actually have an impact on the ending of your story, with up to 3 different endings possible for each class. This is
That's super cool. I mean, it's not like a game where you care about getting all the endings because you need the trophy. I mean, maybe you do need the trophies in this game. I don't know how the achievement system works, but It's very cool that they do that. I would like to see that more in MMOs, that you have branching paths so that not everyone has the exact same experience. I think it adds a layer to it that allows a game to be harder to solve long term. And that makes it more interesting for everybody if the game is harder to solve.
Definitely one of the coolest parts of SWTOR, hands down. Nowadays, SWTOR is largely a single-player experience, and if you've never done it before, it could be a lot of fun, particularly if you're a fan of the Star Wars universe. You'll get your Star Wars music, art, stories, and lightsabers. The game features 8 classes, split 4 and 4 between Jedi and Sith factions, with a lot of overlap between the classes on each side, almost as if one side is a near mirror image of the other side. It's not a bad game to pick up and play with a friend, as it does feature level scaling, which has unfortunately resulted in the questing experience
I have such a hard time finding a friend to play MMOs with. You really need to jump in together most of the time, and all of my friends absolutely abhor the MMO genre. Some of them put up with it better than others, but in general, I am the person in my friend group who just loves MMOs and wants to play nothing but MMOs, and then I have to begrudgingly go and play Fortnite and stuff with other people. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy those games, but if I had my choice, if I could get all of my friends to be into one genre of game, it would always be MMOs, and I would be playing them nonstop.
Becoming perhaps too easy. So you'd definitely be jumping in for the story and not the challenge. The game's population has definitely been sliding over the years, albeit slowly, but now the developer has given the game away, which means its future has never been more uncertain. We'll watch this one closely moving forward. And if you're someone that enjoys MMOs, be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you're kept up to date on all the latest and greatest MMO news. Number 12, Wizard 101, released in 2008 on PC and web browsers. I didn't previously include Wizard 101 on this list, but it turns out this game has enough players to make the cut. Currently sitting at number 12, Wizard 101 was a gateway into the MMO scene for many children around 2008 when it launched. It's still going strong today.
Wizard 101 falls into that same MMO cycle with me of Toontown, Wizards 101, Puzzle Pirates. MMOs that have non-standard turn-based combat is what I would describe them as. There's some kind of, it's not, you're not in a zone where you can active combat with everybody else. You get into battles and then you fight them. They're normally geared more towards children. They had some kind of subscription cost. These are the MMOs that a lot of my cousins were playing when I was growing up. When I was growing up, MMOs were super popular. You would see them advertised on TV. You would see MapleStory advertisements. You would see Wizards 101 advertisements. You would see Toontown advertisements, and those got people into games. And yeah, man, my only experience with these games, Wizards 101 and Toontown, were going over to cousins' houses and seeing them playing them. And I was interested. I mean, watching Toontown, you know, seeing a cousin who had like a level 12 Toon in Toontown, it was cool. It was really interesting.
And still getting new updates regularly. The game lists itself as free to play, but it would be more honest to call it free to try, as you'll need a sub in order to access all the game's best and most relevant content. It's definitely a unique entry.
We should do a series at some point where I go through and try MMOs and play them in a Let's Play type series. That could be an interesting thing to do. Maybe later on when I have a little bit more time.
Featuring a card collecting style of combat, but it does also include your more usual MMO staples like housing
and we could even play them together, guys. Imagine that. Imagine if we played them together.
Fishing. And despite its humble beginnings, it's still sitting here comfortably, holding down the number 12th spot 16 years after its initial release. And next up, moving up one spot from number 12 to number 11 is Albion Online. Now, if you're watching this video and you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm already burnt out on all of these MMOs, perhaps it's time for you to check out the sponsor of today's video, Neverness to Everness.
No,
you can pre-register for the game right now by clicking the link in the description below. In this fast-paced urban RPG built in Unreal Engine 5, you can explore a massive supernatural metropolis brimming with one.
I like these kinds of games. I find these anime-driven, postmodern RPGs that come out from companies like Hoyo and things to be very interesting. I had a good time with Zenless Zone Zero. I think it's fun. I like that gameplay and that style and just the look of it all. I really enjoyed Digimon Cyber Sleuth, which was another RPG that was postmodern based. I like that kind of thing. I like Persona 5. It's just I like being in a world where it feels, and it usually is built after a real world type of place, and you can walk around Shibuya Station and all those things. It's cool.
Wonders and extraordinary creatures. You'll use your powers to take down anomalies in epic battles that will leave your heart racing. While you explore, you'll be able to buy and deck out your home and make it truly your own. But your house isn't the only thing you can customize. You can customize your car until it's perfect for you, just like GTA, or use anti-gravity abilities to explore the urban landscapes. In NTE, the world is packed with lively events to ensure that this open world game is anything but empty. The high-quality graphics and amazing artistic design gives you a fantastic visual experience, enhancing the wide variety of companions that you'll encounter on your journey. You'll even be able to deepen your relationship with those companions by getting to know them better through events in the game. NTE is developed by Hoda Studio, a subsidiary of the well-known Perfect World Games, who will be publishing the game globally.
Okay.
What other game lets you customize your house, customize cars like
Dragon
GTA,
Raja.
and gives you anti-gravity abilities to explore sprawling metropolises, all built in
Which I've also only played for a few minutes on mobile, and I was just totally turned off by
incredibly
it.
powerful Unreal Engine 5. Get ready to explore this unforgettable, massive urban world and unravel all of the mysteries within. So don't miss out on the chance to play this
All of a sudden
epic game at
interested.
launch. Click the link in the description below to pre-register for the game now.
And get
It's
80 free
completely
pulls.
free, so you've got nothing to lose. Massive shout out to Hoda Studios and Perfect World Games for being kind enough to sponsor this video.
Good for you,
Thank
dude.
you
Get that
so
money.
much, and thank you guys for listening. Now let's get back to the video. Launched in 2017,
Albion Online is one of those games that has looked somewhat interesting to me, but the overall mechanic of it being super player driven with the economy and everything seems like something that would turn me off in the long term. I really dislike when I'm playing a video game and my entire focus has to be on keeping track of markets so that I can get the best gear when it's at a certain price and trying to grind out my money to make that happen. I think that becomes really, really boring. Finance Simulator, the game, is not something I'm usually looking for.
to PC, Mac, iOS, and Android. Albion Online is a fantasy sandbox MMORPG that was released 7 years ago now. It's free to
Wow,
play,
that's
but
crazy
it's
it's been
also
that long.
100% pay to win. And it's not for the faint of heart. Albion Online is a full loot PvP MMO.
Yeah.
Now, because it is full loot, that means that you can let someone
like
else pay
Tibia
to win
was.
and then kill them and take all of their gear. Fortunately, if
That's
you
cool.
lose a full loot PvP fight, it's not too terribly difficult to recover from. Most players are only running around with gear that's worth about 1% of their net worth. So once you've been looted, all you have to do is head to the auction house, click a button, and it repurchases your previous loadout.
Okay,
The game
that's kinda
features a
cool.
pretty massive progression tree where the more you use something, the
Is
more
the full world PvP? Like, can I be PvP'd anywhere, or am I in safe zones within certain clans? How does that all
where
work?
you level it up and unlock things down that branch of the tree. Albion Online does feature an optional sub that will greatly reduce the grind. The game's population has been steadily increasing since 2018, helping it climb up to the number 11th spot on the most played MMOs list. If you're looking for something different and high stakes that feels like a MOBA and an MMO merged into one beautiful creature, Albion Online might be a great choice for you. Next up, we have WoW Classic, seeing the largest population decline of all the MMOs on this list since the
WoW Classic fell off extremely hard in this past year. Hardcore WoW came out, and that boosted it way up, and then Season of Discovery got everybody really, really excited. And as Season of Discovery went on, and the new patches came out, and it moved on a season of blah, 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 whatever, I don't care anymore, it fell off like crazy because they made a bunch of decisions that people were super unhappy with. I've heard Asmund talk about it time and time again. I've heard other people talk about it. There's just nothing to do in it once you get to a certain point. They really didn't go the way they should have with it. I think that the idea of WoW Classic is really good. Vanilla WoW is everybody's favorite expansion, or is everybody's favorite version of WoW, at least the people who played it. It's the best one in most people's opinion. I wasn't there, I don't know. But I think that what they should have done was the old school RuneScape route, where they take the game, they continue to push it forward over time, and then they leave it as classic WoW, vanilla WoW, and they don't add in any new expansions. They make brand new expansions that go with it and are voted on by the player base, or maybe they bring in some devs who actually know what they're doing. I know that in general, Blizzard just sort of has this problem right now where they're really bad at deciding what their player base actually wants and understanding that. And that's why I think that it's always going to have this problem. You know, they Blizzard wants to create a game where every year there is new content that negates everything that you did before, so new players have no problem jumping into the game because they care way more about a new player base than they do about an old player base. And the funny thing is that the easiest way to get a new player base is to have an old player base that absolutely loves the game. Old school RuneScape continues to pull in new players because when you ask people if they like that game, they say yes every single time. That's what they do. I mean, there's some people nowadays who are definitely getting burned out on it, but most people love old school RuneScape who play it.
Last time I updated it. This is partly because of how well it was doing 6 months ago when we checked in on it at the launch of Season of Discovery.
Yeah.
It had experienced a massive population
Huge
boom,
peak.
whereas now the Classic community has largely experienced what they wanted to in Season of Discovery, and they're waiting for more and new content. Players tend to come back to WoW Classic and devour the content for a week or two before wandering off to play other games again. In March of 2017, Blizzard finally caved, and
That's what I did. It takes me a really long time to get through WoW. I'm not somebody who knows every inch of that game and understands really how to play it extremely well. I'm not somebody who can just solo the early game content and get myself to mid and late game very quickly, except for in Modern WoW, because you can do that super easily in Modern WoW. But in WoW Classic in general, I never have any friends to group up with, so
announced that they would be making World of Warcraft Classic. World of Warcraft Classic launched to massive appeal, much to the surprise of Blizzard,
Vanilla
who
WoW,
thought there
baby.
was no way players would ever want a Classic server. It's impressive that a spinoff for a version of a 2-decade-old MMO sits this high on the list, and this isn't the only time you'll see that happen. World of Warcraft Classic was a return to WoW before its controversial additions like raid finders, excessive cash shops, and the WoW token. WoW Classic is the classic MMO experience through and through, slower combat, and a strict adherence to the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS. Players actually have to use crowd control abilities and still have to try to avoid aggroing too many mobs. It's going to be interesting to see how long this nostalgia-fueled trip through classic WoW can maintain.
It is fun when you play a game that you actually have to manage what's going on in combat and you're not just there mashing buttons over and over again. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy a game that's easy to play. I enjoy something that I can veg out to, but I also really enjoy challenge. I like when there's games that have different classes that are easier and harder to play, so you can pick one that's easier, but you can also pick one that is much, much harder. And WoW always likes to move in a direction where it becomes easier and easier. They give you way more buttons, but you don't actually need to use most of them. I saw someone comment on one of my videos the other day, and I totally agreed with them, that coming from RuneScape, where the mechanics are so explicit and you have to know all of these skills like prayer flicking and tile skipping and doing all of those things, going into WoW, where most of the mechanics are just don't stand in the fire or dodge this AoE or be ready to smack or kick this orb before it blows up on you. It's comical that people find it to be really, really difficult.
Maintain its steam, and
I just don't have the time to spend living with a guild and becoming best friends with strangers on the internet so that once a week I can log in for 5 hours and all the other time I can get ready to log in for that 5 hours. It's just not what I'm interested in doing.
How many seasons it will be able to continue getting players to return for. If we look at the trends for WoW Classic, we can see its explosive launch in 2019, followed by a moderate level of interest in the months and the years to follow. Interest fell off heavily, but the addition of Season of Discovery was able to bring a lot of those players back.
A little bit of
Discovery
those players
interest
back,
has
about a
largely
fourth.
waned for now, and players seem to be just about done finishing up their Panda experience as well. Will we someday see WoW Classic take the route?
I didn't play Mists of Pandaria. I really thought I was going to, but my subscription was running out, and I was just honestly so burned out. I had got caught up completely in Dragonflight and done all of those things. I was excited to get some mounts, and then other games just pulled my attention away.
Old school RuneScape and carve its entirely own path, completely forking from the story of retail WoW. I don't think this is just a possibility. I think it's a necessity
It has
if they
to
ever
happen.
want to see players stick around for more
Nobody wants to go through the Burning Crusade again. We've done it. We're over it.
than 2 weeks at a time. WoW Classic was number 4 on this list the last time I made it, but it slid all the way down to number 10.
I don't even like the Outlands.
Now, its population is still impressive for a spin-off of an existing MMO, and further proof that there's a massive appetite for the classic MMO experience out there. Holding strong at number 9 is RuneScape, also known as RuneScape 3.
I have got to play RuneScape 3 at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I absolutely have to. There have been so many people in my comments on old school RuneScape videos that have told me how good RuneScape 3 is, and I absolutely have to play it. I have to.
3, a fantasy MMORPG originally built with Java to be played inside of your browser. My friends were playing this MMO on library computers all the way back in the early 2000s.
Me too, dude.
Over 20 years later, this game is still outrageously popular, so let's take a look at it. RuneScape is interesting because there's RuneScape and then there's old school RuneScape. We'll get into old school RuneScape later. Right now, we're going to be talking about RuneScape, or RuneScape 3 as it's known. RuneScape was originally released all the way back in 2001 as a browser game, but that
I would love to try it out. I really think that it could be a lot of fun. I know that Tiff has been really interested in RuneScape 3, so whenever I do go on that journey, I'll probably bring her with me.
That's largely changed. As of 2016, the browser version has been mostly replaced with a standalone client. RuneScape is a game where you can level anything by doing that thing. Level fishing by fishing. Level magic by using magic. It's a grindy
cool.
MMO with a staggering 20 years of content to do. As much as RuneScape has evolved past its sibling, old school RuneScape, it's still very much...
It sort of looks like an Amazon designed MMO. It sort of looks like Wizards 101. But, you know, I do think the art style is somewhat appealing. I like old school RuneScape's art style a lot more because I'm way more used to it. This is a little bit cartoony and not in a way that I really love, but I'm totally down to try.
The old school MMO experience in a lot of ways. Slow-paced fights, basic combat, and not so state-of-the-art graphics. RuneScape did add a WoW-like ability system and a very contentious cash shop as it aged, leading to the birth of its younger, older sibling, old school RuneScape. The pay-to-win nature of the RuneScape cash shop didn't go over well with the community, and in a strange but telling twist, the classic version of the game without the same pay-to-win cash shop has ended up with far more players than the modern.
And people love to use this as an excuse for why old school RuneScape is better than RuneScape 3. And I hate, they're not even the same game. That's the thing that it's not two versions of the same game. They are two completely different games at this point. And I think it's really unfair to judge one if you haven't played it all the way through or played at least a couple hundred hours of it the way that you have old school RuneScape. It shows, and I used to do that a lot too in older videos where I would talk shit about this game even though I've never played it before, but it does show something about you that you're willing to just talk trash about something that you've never played.
Modern version. If we look at the trend for RuneScape, you can see how insanely popular it was back in the mid-2000s. Absolutely massive. If you were an MMO player and you weren't playing WoW, there was a good chance you were dabbling in some RuneScape. RuneScape has lost a lot of players in the last decade, probably many of whom went to its sibling, old school RuneScape. Number 8, Guild Wars 2, launched in 2012.
If anyone ever wants to play Guild Wars 2 and get into it with me, I will 100% do that. I have played Guild Wars 2 for maybe 50 hours in total. I've played a few different characters, but I've never gotten deep into Guild Wars 2. I like the quest system. I like that you don't have to go back to the places in order to turn in quests. I like that when you're exploring the map, there are tons of things around you to do, and you can just start participating, and then once you're done with that, you can move on to the next thing. That's a lot of fun. It does feel like a very flowy, seamless adventure. It's not so much a hub-based game where you have to keep trekking back and forth, and that fast-paced adventure style is really, really fun whenever you're in the mood of just hardcore game.
On PC. Guild Wars 2 is rising 2 places on the list, from number 10 to number 8. Guild Wars 2 had an explosive launch back in 2012 and has since been one of the most popular MMOs on the market. Guild Wars 2 is a free-to-play MMORPG developed by ArenaNet and published by NCSoft. It's worth noting that since this was developed by ArenaNet, it won't feel like an NCSoft game. As MMOs go, Guild Wars does an excellent job of encouraging zone exploration and competition, and tried hard to break the mold of having players run from one yellow exclamation point to the next.
Totally.
And it largely succeeded in those efforts. If you try it out, you'll see what I mean. It's got a very unique questing experience. Guild Wars 2 features a very generous free trial. The first 80 levels are free, and the game does not feature a sub, not even one of those quote-unquote optional subs.
You have to buy the DLCs.
So when it says that you can play it for free, it means it. After the first 80 levels, there is a lot of great content to be had in the expansions. However, those will need to be purchased. And these expansions definitely house the best content in the game. It's here where you'll be able to interact with the game's amazing gliding and mount systems that Guild Wars has become so known for.
Very cool.
They did recently overhaul their new player experience a bit for their Steam launch, which has allowed you to get access to the first mount in the game very early in the game, as opposed to waiting until you purchase the first expansion at level.
Mounts are such an important part of an MMO, or most MMOs at least. I know there's none in RuneScape, but the collection of mounts is such a thing in MMOs to the point that Asmon developed such a culture of having mount offs and having transmogs and all those things. I think it's really an interesting note that ESO is a game that has mounts and has never put flying mounts in the game. I would love to see an ESO expansion. I know it's what we were talking about during Guild Wars, that they were talking about the mounts. I would love to see an ESO expansion that adds flying mounts. I really want to be able to traverse the landscape faster without having to pay my gold to teleport to way shrines over and over again.
80. This was a great change because it's very important for players to get a feel for what those mounts are going to be offering them down the road, and why they're so unique. The mounts in Guild Wars 2 are better than in any other MMO, and its lack of a rigid trinity of tank, healer, and DPS have made it a unique entry into the genre. The Guild Wars 2 main story quest is all entirely voice acted. Both your character and many of the characters that you interact with are voiced. This adds a lot to the story as you get to see and hear your character laugh and cry and go through all of the emotions that dialogue boxes are never able to convey. One of the most memorable parts of Guild Wars 2 is its world.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really care about all that, you know?
Where upwards of 100 players group up to take down dragons the size of skyscrapers.
If your storyline is super basic and boring, the way that most MMOs are, they're very vanilla and plain, and they don't have anything super exciting or interesting going on, nothing really dark that's happened, I'm not going to be that interested in them. I'm just not pulled to bad guy is bad, defeat bad guy. Like, I don't want to hear about what the bad guy has done now, how he's, you know, there was these people in a cave and he broke the cave and it fell on top of the people and we don't know if our fellow friends are still alive and blah. I just don't care, dude. Like, give me, if you've ever read Way of the Shadows, that book, those bad guys are bad, dude. And you want bad things to happen to them because they are committing atrocities and really detailed atrocities, and you hate them. That's what I think video games need to imitate and mimic more, is the idea of making bad guys believable, not just because they want power, not just because like blah blah blah, but because they're deeply flawed individuals who are doing horrible things because this is a world where unfettered power can be given to somebody.
These fights are truly a sight to behold, and it's really cool to see that many people in the community all get together to take these things down. How is Guild Wars trending? Over the last 5 years, this 2012
pretty
MMO's
stable.
population has been holding strong, if not growing a little. There are a couple of big things that are keeping this MMO from being more popular than it is, but the things that it does right, it does so incredibly well that it's worth checking out. Number 7, Elder Scrolls Online, released in 2014 on PC, Mac, Xbox, and PlayStation. Elder Scrolls Online has just dropped its well-received Gold Road expansion. This expansion added...
I haven't played Gold Road yet, but I just finished Necrom somewhat recently. I basically only have fishing and a couple other things to do, to scry all of the materials, so I need to do more bosses and things, but I'm done with SO for the time being. I don't feel the need to be logging into it anymore. It was a lot of fun, dude. I had a really good time with Necrom. I still enjoy SO. I will be back on it at some point in the future. It's fun. If you haven't played SO, you should play it.
Scribing, and some great new rewards. Elder Scrolls Online is a beautiful theme park MMO set in the Elder Scrolls universe and takes place about 950 years before Skyrim, and features the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS. ESO has 12-player raids, 4-player dungeons.
I do think it's kind of silly that SO has this extremely cool mix and match skill system where you get all of these skill lines and you go through and you have to level up each one and you get skills throughout all of them and you can kind of combine them all into being your own thing, and yet we're still pigeonholed into the concept of tank, healer, and DPS. I think that's really dumb. I think that if you're playing ESO, you should basically be able to put together a build that is completely self-sustainable, but has synergy with all the other builds so that you're looking for people specifically that synergistically work well with your build, not with, I need a healer, I need a tank, blah, 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 whatever. I think they should work to make the pieces all match so that not only are you looking for people with personalities that you enjoy playing with, but you're looking for people who have a play style that goes well with yours and makes you more powerful,
as well as a ton of single-player content for you to enjoy. There are 3 tiers of difficulty for each type of content, allowing players to push themselves farther and farther. It definitely leans towards the casual MMO player and stands out as one of the more story-driven MMO experiences out there. Every quest, and I mean every single word of every single quest, is voice acted. ESO is buy to play with an optional sub, so if you want, you can pick up the base game and get hundreds of hours out of it. If you enjoy that, you can subscribe for $15.
And the base quest line in SO is really, really good, and I enjoyed it a lot. lot, and I thought that the culmination of it, the ending, was a lot of fun, and the zones that you go to are really, really cool.
It's a month to unlock the other half of the game. Elder Scrolls Online features action combat, which is often a hate it or love it topic for players that try this MMO out. If you're used to tab targeting MMOs of old, it's going to take a little bit of time and a lot of patience to get used to this.
Tab targeting is definitely an outdated playstyle at this point, but I do love a good tab targeting MMO.
Game's combat. ESO is currently celebrating its 10-year anniversary and has been giving out amazing rewards, huge expansions, and will be capping it all off with its next expansion in 2025, so expect big things to come. If we look at ESO's chart, it seems to be maintaining its population pretty well, and the population for the game is looking very healthy. But the best part about ESO is its mega servers, which prevent the population from being...
So in North America has a server, EU has a server, and I'm sure that the other countries or the other continents have servers as well, but you just log in and you can play with anybody who's on those servers. You don't have to jump from worlds. You don't have to pay for server transfers. You're just there. It's really good. I still say that RuneScape has the best server system of any game that I've ever played. The fact that everyone's just poured into a giant pool and then you just switch worlds, but Essos does it really
fragmented, which means you won't have any problems finding other people to play with. Sitting here at number 7.
I just wish that they didn't have shards in Esso. I wish that we could figure out a way to make an MMO where everybody can be in the same world at the same time, so you feel like the area that you're in is full at all times.
It's easily one of the biggest MMOs in the world, and unlike the next MMO on this list, it's not pay to win. Next up, sitting at number 6, we have Lost Ark, which is one of the youngest MMOs.
I haven't played Lost Ark. I feel like so many people have told me that I've basically missed out on prime time to play Lost Ark that I just don't feel like it's even worth me getting into it anymore, and that's such a disappointment because it looked like a game that I would really, really be interested in, but that it's just pay to win, and then when you get the pay to win peak, then you have to wait for the next one, and then you just pay to win again.
It's on this list and has recently seen its population size implode. In May, it had an average concurrent player base size of 55,000 players on at any one time.
Peak's
in
nearly
June,
100,000.
that average has dropped down to 19,000 players. So it's effectively lost over half of its player base in 1 month. It looks like this young MMO is really starting to struggle. Still, it's holding on to the 6th slot on the list, so it's no slouch.
The combat looks
Lost
so
Ark
good.
is a free-to-play, top-down MMORPG that launched in the East in 2019 and finally here in the West in 2022. Lost Ark is Diablo meets Final Fantasy meets a Las Vegas casino. It has a cash shop and a gear progression system that will frequently remind you of its Eastern MMO roots. The game is absolutely pay to win, or if you prefer, we can call it pay for power. But to its credit, it is also one of the few major MMOs that you can choose to play for completely free. And I'm not talking about those MMOs you can try for free. You can legitimately access and play the entire game for free if you have the patience and the determination to push through the grind and the monetization.
I don't know. I really wish it was amazing. I would love for it to not be pay to win. But I'm never going to sink that kind of money into a game. So the idea that I'm going to play a game and I'm basically going to be blocked out of the player base because the people who are really there are the ones who are paying a lot of money, it turns me off.
It comes with it. There are more currencies than you can count, and your gear progression involves multiple layers of gambling said currencies. Despite its top-down view, it does feature dungeons and
so does MapleStory. MapleStory gambles a lot too.
Raids, and these are definitely some of the most popular content in the game. The ultimate goal in Lost Ark is to sail around the world, collect all of the things, and increase your character's power. The sailing is a lot of fun, especially early on when you first access it. Lost Ark's weaknesses are
I love this graphic style. It just looks so good.
Definitely going to be its pay-to-win monetization and the sheer number of bots that seem to infect it. One of Lost Ark's biggest strengths is its combat, and a lot of the players will...
It sort of reminds me of Final Fantasy VII. It just has that kind of vibe to me.
Tell you that the combat is extremely satisfying. On top of that, the game has a wide variety of classes, with more on the way, each with their own look and feel to make sure that anyone can find the right class for them. If we look at Lost Ark's trends, we can see the interest in Lost Ark exploded in 22 when it launched in the West, and then quickly dropped back down to reality after the initial hype. It has fallen a long way since then, but still remains above some heavy hitters like Guild Wars 2 and ESO. Sitting at number 5 is Black Desert Online, released in 2015.
Dude, I just cannot get into Black Desert Online, and I have tried so many times. I remember when Black Desert Online first came out, and everybody was super, super into it. I know that it's on mobile now, but it just runs kind of poorly. I mean, maybe on PC it's a little bit better. I haven't tried it. I know that there you can turn down a bunch of settings so that it probably wouldn't run as badly, but I have a PS5 and it just doesn't run that well. It's very clunky. It's very slow. There's a lot of pop-in that happens when you're playing that game. People's models don't load. It's a janky feeling experience.
And is available on PlayStation, Xbox, Windows, iOS, and Android. Moving up one position from the last time I made this list is Black Desert Online. If you ask someone why they like BDO, they will almost certainly tell you that it's the combat, that and how beautiful the game is. BDO is an open world game with very little in the way of instance content. You don't play BDO for dungeons and trials. You play BDO to kill things out in an open world, often for hours on end just to gain a few % of a level. BDO is very much a go out and grind type of game.
It's like MapleStory. It comes from the same world. It comes from Korean MMOs, and that's totally fine. But it is definitely a game where you want to go around in a loop and just kill the same things over and over again. It's a flow state MMO. That's what these kinds of games are. Same thing with MapleStory. It's about the grind that you're doing.
It's also important to note that it's an always-on PvP game. Once you hit 50, the PvP is on. Anyone can kill you at almost any time. This is definitely one of the more unique features of the game.
And people can test spots hard.
Makes it popular among PvP players. BDO has some pretty negative associations here in the West thanks to its previous publisher making the game overly pay to win with some pretty heavy-handed monetization on top of that. But since the developer has parted ways with that publisher,
let me propose this question. Have you ever seen a heavily pay-to-win MMO that has succeeded long-term? Have we seen it yet? Have we seen an MMO that isn't destroyed by getting more and more heavily pay-to-win? If anything, I think that games should move in the opposite direction. That if you need to start off heavy pay-to-win, I mean, maybe, but realistically, as your game goes on, the game should be either submodel or it should be pay to play from the beginning. You pay once and then you play forever. And it should be accessible to anybody who's willing to put the time in. And it shouldn't matter how much money you dump on the game. It shouldn't have a direct effect on your power.
They have undone a lot of the less popular aspects of its monetization, making it possibly worth looking into again if you haven't recently. BDO features a ton of unique classes and continues to actively update the game, but how is the game's population trending as of late? The population seems to be holding on. In fact, BDO seems to have largely stopped the bleeding of its player base. If you're more of a PvE player, recent expansions have added a lot of questing and PvE content if you're into that sort of thing. Next up at number 4, MapleStory.
MapleStory is number 4. Dude, I've been saying it for this game for forever, man. It's a decent game. It is a super huge grind fest, and it takes a really long time to play, but it's not a bad game. Yes, there's pay-to-win elements in it, but you can play on reboot servers that aren't pay-to-win whatsoever. It's a good game, man. I play on some of the pay-to-win servers. I don't have a problem with it. I just enjoy the gameplay loop, and I don't worry about it, specifically because you're not competing for resources a lot of the times. You are not really trying to be the best in the game in order to play with your friends or do these big... It's not a game like that. It's a very solo-y kind of experience. The bossing a lot of times is like a playing with your friends, but like... It's a good game, man. It really is. If you haven't played MapleStory, you owe it to yourself to go and experience what that game is and what it does. There are problems with it, and it probably won't be your favorite game that you've ever played, but it's an interesting one for sure. And you gotta think, it's a 2D side-scrolling MMO. Like, that is such a unique aspect of it. And it has done things with that I am so amazed by and so interested in. The combat in MapleStory is so well loved that it has inspired combat systems in other games and will continue to inspire new game developers forever.
On PC, almost like an indestructible cockroach surviving a nuclear blast, MapleStory climbs up to number 4 on this list. After being caught lying to its players about drop rates for items they were spending real money to gamble for, it still sits here at number 4. MapleStory launched in 2003 in the East and 2005 in the West. This is another game that was a gateway into the MMO scene for a lot of modern-day MMO players. It was immensely successful and still manages to stay relevant nearly 2 decades later. So far, the game has reached over 260
RIP MapleStory 2.
60 million registered users worldwide and grossed over $3 billion in lifetime revenue. To put that into perspective, the only MMO that comes close to having had that many people try it is World of Warcraft. It's got around 42 different classes for you to try and offers an incredibly unique and accessible experience. In other words, it runs on a toaster and it's got 2 decades worth of content, so there's
I can play this game on a Dell laptop from 2013. I mean, you can play it on basically anything, and it's a good time
for you to do. How did the charts look? Well, here we see this 20-year-old MMO beating out modern staples in the genre like RuneScape 3, BDO, and Guild Wars 2, which is pretty impressive for a 2-decade-old entry. Continuing to hold down the third position is Old School RuneScape. Launched in 2013.
The one, dude. The one true king.
And continued to climb in population size as if it was completely unaware that MMOs are supposed to become less popular with age. You can either play this game on any computer less than 20 years old or your phone.
There are just so many ways to play Old School RuneScape that if you get into Old School RuneScape right now as a player who has never played it before, you will be playing for the next 30, 40 years without being able to experience every single thing that has happened in this game. I mean, it's just going to continue to add more and more content. People are going to come up with more and more interesting ideas and ways to play it. Settled has done things for this game that have completely changed the meta of what people think about it, with Iron Man accounts, hardcore Iron Man accounts, all of these region locked accounts, that have even come into play with actual events that they have done in RuneScape themselves and made official servers that have region locked accounts and things. It is just perfection. I mean, RuneScape is one of those games that takes me a lot of time to cool down from after I've spent a ton of time in it, because it is super grind heavy, and especially when you get higher and higher levels, the grinds stop being, oh, this is going to be a 12-hour grind, and start being, oh, this is going to be a 60 or 70-hour grind for me to get what I want. But it is so rewarding in the way that it gives you back every single thing that you put into it. It makes you feel like you have earned what you get whenever you play RuneScape.
The system requirements are so low that this is probably the most accessible MMO out there, and I think it owes a lot of its success to that. On top of that, Old School RuneScape is a game run by the players, with each significant change voted on by the player base. Old School RuneScape launched as a result of the community not loving some of the changes that were made to the game. Retail RuneScape added WoW-like abilities and a cash shop that many accused of introducing pay-to-win to the game, and so the community begged the developers for the creation of Old School RuneScape. Jagex finally agreed and created servers that were based on a 2007 version of the game. RuneScape does not have the player follow a linear storyline, but instead has the player choose their own path through the game. Players can choose to kill monsters, go off questing, or level up one of their many different skills. Old School RuneScape is a make the numbers go up game. You skill up, you level up your crafting, your sword wielding, your fishing, anything that you can think of, you can level it up. And a lot of people love doing exactly that. RuneScape is a very sandboxy MMO that allows for a lot of AFK skilling, and thanks to its slow pace and incredibly low computer requirements, it's very accessible. It's got some pretty involved quests that would be near impossible to figure out without the help of add-ons and guides, and it is as old school as it gets, with a very clunky combat system and user interface. It will definitely take some patience and getting used to if you're going to be trying it for the first time in 2024.
Totally, but I'm working on a project right now that will hopefully help with that.
Old School RuneScape has been so successful that its active player count has now far eclipsed retail RuneScape, and a lot of other MMOs for that matter. If we look at how the game...
I think a big problem that happens with Old School RuneScape is that people who get dropped into it are constantly bombarded by people who have been playing it for a really long time with all these things that they should do, because if that person was going to make a brand new account in this day and age, this is what they would do. But the only reason that you feel like that's what you're going to do is because you've already done it the other way. And the other way is what actually makes you really fall in love with the game and appreciate all of the better ways that there are to play it.
The game is trended on Google. We can see its impressive growth over the years. By the numbers, it appears that Old School RuneScape has held on to the 3rd spot, and at times it had even passed number 2. Pretty impressive for being born from a browser game that was released in 2001. You can dismiss its success and say that it's all bots, but once again, that would fail to explain its massive presence on Google Trends. Number 2, and perhaps the most surprising upset on this list, is going to be the fact that World of Warcraft has been dethroned.
So Final Fantasy 15 is now the top. That's interesting. I've heard a lot of negative things about Final Fantasy 15 right now. Dawn Trail looks boring to me. I think it looks like a whitewashed, boring, vanilla, let's all go have a beach day side story in the anime filler arc type thing, and I'm just not that interested in it. WoW is sitting here right now, I think, because we're still about 18 days away from the next expansion launching, and people are taking a break for it in preparation for that expansion. I know that's what I'm doing. I bet after the next one comes out in 6 months, we will probably see WoW overtake Final Fantasy 15 again. When he updates this list, that's my prediction for this next list, is that we're going to see Final Fantasy 15 overtaken by WoW because of the War Within, as long as the War Within is a positively accepted expansion, and I'm really excited for it. The delve concept in the War Within, the ability to do these dungeons with NPCs, or that scale, and you can do them with one other person or 3 other people or whatever. I'm really excited for that.
Though likely only temporarily. Sliding to number 2 is World of Warcraft. Most likely, a lot of WoW players are taking a break from WoW to play the MMO, sitting at number 1 this month before they return to WoW. The lead up to Dragonflight propelled WoW far above Final Fantasy XIV, and it held on to that spot until Final Fantasy XIV dropped its Dawn Trail expansion. Public opinion of World of Warcraft has massively improved since its self-inflicted wound that was Shadowlands. Now with Chris Metzen at the helm, the community has high hopes for a return to form. With the first of 3 announced expansions releasing later this year, it's going to be a massive year for World of Warcraft, with some players clocking in nearly 20 years played. It's a testament to the massive appeal this game was able to garner. World of Warcraft is a massive, seamless MMO that still handles scale better than any other MMO I've played. You can see a location, a mountain, a castle, multiple zones away, and get on your mount and fly there. This is something that a lot of MMOs created well after World of Warcraft are still unable to deliver on, thanks to them being broken.
And WoW just looks so good. The art style has aged just like fine wine. I mean, it looks so nice. The locales that you can go to really fill you with something. I mean, they just have a sense of place to them. Even nowadays, when you go to old zones and they're mostly empty and they feel sort of eerie in some kind of way, they still just look great.
Down into smaller zones with rampant load screens in between. WoW still looks great thanks to an art style that has aged incredibly well over the years, and perhaps more importantly, numerous engine overhauls that have kept it feeling somewhat modern despite being 2 decades old. World of Warcraft features the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS, and has 13 unique classes, each with multiple different specs for you to spec into. There's a lot of single player content for you to level your way up with, as well as dungeons and raids. WoW's dungeons and
I think that the raids and the dungeons in WoW are really easy to get into, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time to get there. That's the problem with RuneScape, in my opinion, is that if you want to raid in RuneScape, you're in for a hard journey if you've never played the game before. But in WoW, you give yourself about 2 months and you're ready to raid, and you can hop into pug groups and you can get in there and do your business and be up there in the leader or in the damage meters and be halfway up the charts without any struggle whatsoever. Most people who play this game are really bad at it. It's pretty astounding, just the amount of people who cannot do a very simple mechanic over and over and over again, and you'll explain it to them in between the wipes, and then they just sit there and they do it again.
Raids are among the best out there, but be prepared to devote a good chunk of time to them, as they're quite a bit longer than in other MMOs.
Totally.
So what does interest in WoW look like according to the trends? You can see on this graph how WoW absolutely dwarfs the competition in its prime back in the early 2000s. Looking at its popularity from 2004 to 2012, nothing else even comes close. When we look at the last few years, WoW usually still sits at the number 1 spot, but Final Fantasy has reached a point where it's able to pass it during its expansion launches. This Titan
Dawn Trail launched at a perfect time when WoW didn't have a lot going on, and it's happened to work out very well for them. I was turned off by Mists of Pandaria. Just like I said, I've been playing a lot up to that point, and I just wasn't willing to start all over again and grind my way back up after having just done that with Season of Discovery and having just done that with a new Warlock that I was playing in Dragonflight. So Dawn Trail pulled it out and just
of the industry is still just that, a titan in the industry, but it's not the untouchable titan that it once was. And number 1, Final Fantasy XIV, released
Obviously,
in 2010, available on PlayStation, PC, and
This just
Xbox.
doesn't look fun
right
to me,
now,
man.
the most popular MMO in the world is Final Fantasy XIV. This game has earned this
It looks like Besaid, and
spot
I like
by
Besaid, don't get me wrong,
devoting
but
to improving the quality of the content it released for 14 years in a row. But perhaps just as important is the fact that it treats its community better than any other MMO out right now, and that mentality has clearly paid huge dividends for Square Enix. The new Dawn Trail expansion propelled Final Fantasy to the number 1 spot, adding 2 new classes, a ton of new zones, and starting a brand new storyline after wrapping up the previous 10-year story during the Endwalker
did they add Dragon Knight? Is that what they finally did?
expansion. Final Fantasy XIV continues to be a story
Was Dragon Knight already there? Yeah, because Lancer was already there, right? So Dragon Knight had to already be
that
there.
gives hope to rocky MMO launches today. You can fix an imperfect MMO if you're willing to listen to the feedback of the community and put the work in. But you
Final Fantasy XIV has one of my favorite art styles of all MMOs. I just love that over-designed, super complex, interwoven Final Fantasy sort of look that it has. The way that the armor sets are all these super, like, thorny-looking, super complicated designs that just overlap themselves constantly, and it's really hard to focus your eyes on any part of it. I really like that. The bosses look super cool. The aesthetic of the arenas that you fight in looks super cool. The collars are all really
have
nice.
to resist
Final
the
Fantasy does a
urge
good
to
job.
over-monetize your MMO. Final Fantasy XIV is a fantasy MMORPG that places a massive focus on the story. The single-player story content comes first, and every piece of the game that follows is built in service to that end. The dungeons are unlocked as part of the story. The trials are unlocked and woven into the story. Some of the most memorable cutscenes in the game are delivered in the middle of a trial while you're fighting for your life. Final Fantasy XIV also features 22 different classes and the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS. Final Fantasy XIV has one of the most generous free trials out of any MMO, allowing you to play the first 70 levels and the first 2 expansions for completely free. After that, you do have to buy the game and pay the...
There's so many caveats in that, though. There's so many things that you can't do with a free trial account that make you want to pay for the
mandatory
actual game.
$13 a month subscription. Thanks to this mandatory sub, however, the game is free of pay to win. It's free of loot boxes, and it has hundreds of cosmetics and mounts that you can earn by playing the game. 2024 has been an incredible year for Final Fantasy XIV, but will it be able to hold on to the #1 spot? We'll check back in 6 months at the beginning of 2025 and find out when we update this list. If we look at how Final Fantasy XIV has been trending, it's been battling WoW for the top spot for the last few years. But with WoW's World Soul Saga around the corner, holding on to the #1 spot is going to be tough. We have seen some massive upsets in 2024, with popular MMOs clawing their way to the top or sliding their way to the bottom. We've seen multiple MMOs drop stunning expansion like ESO's Gold Road and Final Fantasy XIV's Dawntrail, and arguably the biggest MMO expansion has yet to drop, with World of Warcraft's War Within expansion coming out on August 26. Did any of the results on this list surprise you? Let me know in the comments below.
It's a good time to be an MMO player. It really is. There's a lot going on. The communities are getting more and more active. People are being turned on more and more to it as they've sort of burned out on the fast pay to win, battle pass type games that have been popularized over the past 10 years. And so I think it's just a great time to be an MMO player. I'm glad that I'm here. I've learned so many skills in MMOs over the years that now I can continue to pull into these MMOs as I get further and further into my journey. As new content comes out, I'm poised and ready to play it, which is something that a lot of people don't understand about MMOs, is that, like, it's a skill that you build up over a long period of time. You sort of move around from game to game, and you find new things in that game that pull you into the new skills. And I'm glad to be here, man. I really think that it's a great time to be an MMO player, and just, thank goodness for it. So give the video a like. Lucky Ghost's cool channel. I appreciate this. I'll be checking in on his next list in 2025, and I guarantee you that WoW is going to overtake it again. And maybe by then I'll play Dawntrail and I'll have played The War Within. Who knows? Peace, guys. Be safe out there.